بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وبارك على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. Alhamdulillah, we in the previous lesson concluded the first mas'ala, the first issue discussed in this second part of the introduction by Shaykh al-Islām Muḥammad Abdul Wahhāb. And today we're going to the second mas'ala, ومسألة الثانية أن الله يرضى أن يشرك معه أحد في عبادته لا ملك مقرب ولا نبي مرسل ودليل قوله تعالى وأن مساجد لله فلا تدعوا مع الله أحدا. And so we have the second issue, which is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not pleased that anything be associated in partnership with Him in ibadah, in worship, whether that be an angel that is close, nor a prophet that has been sent. And the proof is the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and indeed the masajid belong to Allah, so do not call upon anything other than Allah. And so this is the second affair. وحقا إن الله الذي انفرد بخلق العباد ورزقهم وهو المتصرف فيهم والمدبر لشؤونهم لا يرضى أن يكون له شريك في عبادته. And so in reality, the reality is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has singled out the ibad, the worshippers, alone and for the ibadah. And that He Azza wa Jal is alone when it comes to fulfilling and disposing of the affairs within the creation and within the affairs, fulfilling the affairs of the creation. And now He subhanahu wa ta'ala is not pleased with anything being placed in partnership along with Him in terms of ibadah. Thereafter, Shaykh Zayd raḥimahullāh, he mentions the definition of ibadah, definition mentioned by Shaykh al-Islām ibn Taymiyyah raḥimahullāh. And so he mentions that al-ibadah ismu jami' لكل ما يحبه الله ويرضاه من أقوال وأفعال وأعمال الظاهر والباطنة. And so the word ibadah is a term which is a comprehensive term, يعني, for everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves and is pleased with, from speech, actions, whether they be actions which are apparent or hidden. And so whoever directs anything from this ibadah, from these ibadat, or these actions of worship, to other than Allah, then he has committed shirk al-akbar. He's committed the major shirk. ومن أشرك مع الله عز وجل غير من مخلوقاته فقد أشرك شرك الأكبر. And whoever directs any form of worship along with Allah from the makhluqat, he worships anything from the creation along with Allah tabarak wa ta'ala, then indeed he's no doubt he's fallen into a major shirk. Then فَجَمِيعَ عِبَادَات وَقُرَبَات, so all forms of the worship and actions of nearness, whether it be isti'āna or istighatha or dhabh or nadha or raghba or rahma or khushu' or khashya or inaba or tawakkul or raja' or khawf, whether it be any form of ibadah, whether it be seeking the aid of Allah or the nadhr, making a vow or desire, whether it be the reverent fear or that the person, for example, submits. Along with that, you have the examples of the person having reliance and hope and fear. All these are ibadat. So here, barakallahu fiqh, Shaykh Zayd is mentioning these different forms of ibadah, and he's mentioning them in a comprehensive way. Mentions them in a comprehensive way, barakallahu fiqh. Because he mentions, for example, al-isti'āna wa-istighatha wa-dhabh wa-nadhr. So istighatha or isti'āna, generally speaking, when you're seeking the aid in a manner which is only for Allah, then these are actions. These are actions generally done with the limbs, or when you're seeking the aid of your tongue, you're requesting that with the tongue. And then he mentions, for example, raghba, wal-rahma, wa-khawf, wal-raja, wa-tawakkul, and affairs like this. Affairs such as these. And here, the Shaykh is referring to the actions that emanate from the heart. And so what we understand and the benefit of these different forms of ibadah being mentioned is that it gives us the understanding that ibadah can come from ibadah upon the limbs, which are well known, actions of ibadah, but also ibadah can be ibadah from the heart as well. And so, no doubt the person must reflect and seek to purify their heart when it comes to the affair of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so that when they are seeking to perform actions of ibadah, that these actions of ibadah have to be sincerely for Allah. For example, the khawf, the fear that they have for Allah, is a fear that can only be for Allah. And it cannot be for anything or anyone else from the makhluqat, from the creation. Or that hope that they have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can only be with Allah. And cannot be with anything or anyone else from the creation. Likewise, tawakkul. Likewise, when the individual has the reliance. A person can only truly rely when his heart is reliant upon something or someone. And so that reliance is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. So here, Shaykh Zayd is mentioning these different forms of ibadah, and this is in accordance with what is actually mentioned by Shaykh al-Islām Muḥammad ibn Abdul Wahhāb in the same text, Thalāthat al-Uṣūl, when he mentions different forms of ibadah. And he outlines the different forms, i.e. in terms of ibadah from the limbs and the ibadah from the heart. Now, and so anything that is directed from ibadah to other than Allah, then this is shirk akbar, this is major shirk. Now, wa shirk akbar, dhanb usiya Allah bihi, wa huwa al-dhanb alladhi la yughfar wa la yustahaq ahlahu al-shafa'ah. And so, this affair of major shirk is one in which no doubt is actual disobedience towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's the dhanb, it's the sin that the person will not be forgiven for. And the one that falls into that sin of shirk and associating partners with Allah, he is not deserving of a shafa'ah. He's not deserving of any intercession. وَإِنَّمَا هُمْ مِنْ أَهْلِ النَّارِ الْخَالِدِينَ وَخَالِدِينَ. And rather, what we know is that they are from the people of the fire. They are from the people of the fire that will dwell within it for eternity. كما قال الله عز وجل إن الله لا يغفر أن يشرك به ويغفر ما دون ذلك لمن يشاء. As Allah Ta'ala states, indeed Allah does not forgive the one that associates anything in partnership with him. However, he forgives anything lesser than it from that which he wills. Likewise, the statement of Allah Ta'ala, وَأَنَّ الْمَسَاجِدَ لِلَّهِ فَلَا تَدْعُوا مَعَ اللَّهِ أَحَدًا. And indeed, the masajid belong to Allah, so do not call upon anything other than Allah. And so, again, what we understand from this, barakallahu feekum, in relation to this affair of shirk akbar, major shirk, and the one that associates partnership with Allah, and the one that directs an action of ibadah to other than Allah, any form of ibadah. So this is something which is indiscriminate. If a person directs any form of ibadah to other than Allah, then he's fallen into major shirk. And so, major shirk, generally speaking, when you define major shirk, and you find Ahlul Ilm, they define major shirk or minor shirk, they will usually define it based upon the uqubah. They will define major shirk or minor shirk based upon the punishment for it and the consequence of it. And so the uqubah for major shirk in the dunya is that the person is mukhrij min al-millah. The person has been expelled from the deen of Islam. So this is the individual that is upon major shirk. The recompense and the consequences that the person is upon major shirk is outside the fold of Islam. And this is how it's defined in terms of in the dunya. As so far as the akhirah, then the individual that is upon major shirk, then his abode will be the hellfire for eternity. And so this is how the distinction is made between major and minor shirk. As well as that, the one that falls into major shirk, as mentioned here by Shaykh Zayd, he is not mustahiq, he's not deserving of the shafa'ah, he's not deserving of any intercession. Now, so then Allah Ta'ala, he mentions the statement of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, it's also Jinn, وَأَنَّ مَسَاجِدَ لِلَّهِ فَلَا تَدْعُوا مَعَ اللَّهِ أَحَدًا. And indeed, the masajid belong to Allah, so do not call upon Allah, or call upon anything alongside Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. أي لا تعبدوا أحدا مع الله أبدا من الملائكة المقربين ولا من الرسل الكرام ولا من الأنبياء العظام ولا من الصالحين من الأنام ولا الأشجار والأحجار ولا غير ذلك إذ كل عبادة لغير الله عز وجل فهي عبادة للطاغوت. And so this statement of Allah Ta'ala, do not worship or call upon anything other than Allah. This ayah here, وَأَنَّ مَسَاجِدَ لِلَّهِ فَلَا تَدْعُوا مَعَ اللَّهِ أَحَدًا. Shaykh Ahmad al-Najmi raḥimahullāh, he mentions in Naqilam, transmitting and narrating from some of the mufassirin, from some of the scholars of tafsir in relation to this ayah, he mentions that the masajid, the word masajid within this ayah, can be referring to the masajid al-ma'rufa, the well-known masajid, the buildings, where these buildings have been established for the worship of Allah. This is one understanding of the word masajid. The second understanding of the word masajid from this ayah also are the al-a'dha, the 7 limbs that the person prostrates upon. And so, if you understand it from the affair of the masajid, that these places have been built and established for the sake of Allah, and so do not call upon anything along with Allah Ta'ala. And if you understand it by way of the second understanding from the Mufassirin, that these 7 limbs belong to Allah, and that the person, when in a prostration, that prostration has to be for Allah Ta'ala. And so do not call upon anything along with Allah. So both understanding, no doubt, the both of them can be correct in this regard, because it still alludes to the fact that ibadah is for Allah, ibadah is established for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, and they can have no partners, and nothing can be associated in partnership with Him. It doesn't matter whether they are angels that are close to Allah, or whether they are messengers, noble messengers, or they are from the prophets that have great status of grandeur, or the righteous. Nor can it be the stone, the trees or the stones, or other than that. If a person directs their ibadah to other than Allah Azza wa Jal, then this is the worship of the Tahoot. This is the worship of these false deities. They've taken the worship of a false deity. And so, Shaykh Zayd goes on to mention a discussion around the word Tahoot. These false gods and false deities. We mentioned وَالطَّاغُوتِ اسم عام لكل ما تجاوز به العبد حده بالمعبود أو متبوع أو مطاع ولا يستبعد المسلمون خطر الشرك. And so, this Tahoot is a general term for everything that has been, or any action that oversteps the bounds, so transgresses the bounds when it comes to the one that is worshipped, or the one that is followed, or the one that is obeyed. And it's not something which is regarded as being far-fetched, or something which is far away, and considered to be something which is distant from the Muslims. This danger of shirk. For no doubt, shirk in of itself is a dangerous affair. Whether it be the kabir or the saghir, whether it be the major or the minor, whether it be the qalil or the kathir, whether it be that which is small in its amount or plentiful. ومن هنا وجب يتفقد المسلمون وبالأخص طلبة العلم أحوالهم. And so here is an obligation that the Muslims are well aware of this affair, and specifically the Thalāthat al-ilm, the students of knowledge, that they're well aware of the affairs of the Muslims, and they're well aware of the actions of the Muslims, and the behaviors of the Muslims. And so he mentioned here, the Shaykh mentioned specifically the Thalāthat al-ilm. Why? Why do you think he mentioned the students of knowledge specifically in this affair? He said specifically that the students of knowledge as well have to have knowledge of these particular affairs and be aware of them. I mentioned them.
Because the matter of teaching.
They might not teaching it. That's the now. What else as well? Why do they need to know of the affairs of the people?
They're the inheritors of the knowledge.
The inheritors of the knowledge. Sahih.
They're callers to it, so they have to know that which what they're calling to and that which negates it.
Now, they're the callers. And the reality as well is that from the adab, from the mannerisms of the caller, from the mannerisms of the caller is that he must know the hal of the mad'u. He must know the hal, the condition of the one that is being called. So if you're a caller, then you must know the condition of the one that's being called. Why? Because you must be able to call and invite him to that which is munasib for him, that which is appropriate for that individual. For example, if you've been sent to a people and they're from the Nasara, they're from the Christians, and so it's your responsibility to call them to Islam. If you don't have knowledge of what they are upon, as the one those that are being called, then it's not going to benefit you if you call them and you give them da'wah to the affair of the existence of Allah and warn them against atheism, for example, because they are well aware of that. And that's not where they've opposed the haqq. They've opposed the haqq in regards to the reality of Isa alayhi salam, if we're talking about the people of the book, the Nasara, the Christians. And so here it's important that the one that is a talib al-ilm, who is the talib al-ilm, he is the one that is most likely to become a caller. That he is well aware of the affairs of these affairs of shirk that may enter upon the ranks of the Muslimin, enter upon the ranks of the Muslims, and the danger that may be found within, so that when it comes to the point where he may need to call them to the haqq and warn them against the mukhalafat, warn them against the opposition of the haqq, he's aware of what they're upon, to warn them of what they're upon, and warn them of the mukhalafat that they're upon, the opposition action that they're upon. Thereafter the Shaykh he mentions, وقد أخبر النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بأن يخاف على أمته من شرك خوفا عظيم، حيث قال إن أخوف ما أخاف عليكم الشرك الأصغر. قالوا وما هو؟ قال الرياء. And indeed Allah, the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم, the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, he informs us that of his fear upon his ummah, that which he fears for his ummah, and that he fears for them shirk. And this is clear by way of his statement that the greatest thing that I fear for you, is minor shirk, the lesser form of shirk. And they stated, and he was asked, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, وَمَا هُوَ? And what is that? What is that lesser form of shirk? وَقَالَ الرِّيَاء. And he stated, it is al-riya. It's this affair of riya, showing off. Again, so why do we understand that his greatest fear was for this minor shirk? Why is it mentioned that the greatest fear is for the minor shirk and not the major shirk?
take it
ease
to
that
like.
one does it, the ease of how one does it creeps in. Eventually
No.
it can lead to major shirk.
That both answers are correct. Now, the ease of how it may creeps in. That when you have the affair of minor shirk, from again from the ta'rifat, from the definitions of minor shirk, is that it is the form of shirk that can lead to the major shirk. So it's a form of shirk that can lead to the major shirk. And so the reason why the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions that he feared this minor shirk for his ummah is because this is a form of shirk which is hidden, that the people won't be aware of it and won't see it. And so when it creeps in, then the person may fall into the action of minor shirk. And if the person remains upon that, it can lead him to falling into major shirk, which will then render the individual as being someone that is khalid mukhalid fi nar, within the hellfire for eternity. And the Shaykh Imam Sa'di raḥimahullāh, he mentions in relation to al-Riyā, as a form of showing off, why it is minor shirk. And he mentions that al-Riyā is minor shirk, like showing off is minor shirk, because it's ta'zeem al-makhluqat in bighayri haqq. So it's a form of glorifying the creation without due right. So, for example, if a person is performing their salah, and then they seek to beautify their salah due to the fact that the people are watching, or they know that an individual is watching, within that action of beautifying the salah for that person that is watching, within that action is that he has made ta'zeem, he's glorified that individual and raised them above a station that they're deserving. And so he's beautifying his prayer for this individual. And so thus within the action is raising the person. And so there's no doubt, you can see how this can lead to the major shirk. Because if the heart can now incline to raising an individual and glorifying an individual more than they are deserving, then it can incline towards the person directing an action of ibadah towards that person as well. وَيَعْذُ بِاللَّهِ. And so this is why this hadith is mentioned. The greatest thing that he sallallahu feared for his ummah is the minor shirk. فإنه ضرب من ضروب الشرك فلا بد من تحقيق التوحيد ظاهر وباطن. And so, in order to repel this action of shirk, in order to repel the shirk, it's a must that the person enters upon tawheed, whether that be tawheed which is apparent or the tawheed within. And so within this tawheed, the person makes barā'a min shirk wa ahlihi, is that the person, whilst being upon tawheed, they free themselves. It's upon the person, and it's a necessity that if a person wants to be upon tawheed, i.e. upon tawheed kamilan, if they are seeking to be upon tawheed in a manner which is complete and upon perfection, they must free themselves from shirk, and they must free themselves from its people as well. Now, and so they must do so in order to protect themselves and repel this affair of shirk, so they do not fall into anything from this major or minor shirk. Now, وقد سئل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كما في الحديث عبد الله بن مسعود رضي الله عنه حيث قال يا رسول الله أي ذنب الأعظم. And so it was mentioned that the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم was asked, as I mentioned in the hadith of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud رضي الله عنه, he was asked, O Messenger of Allah, what is the greatest of sins? And so he responded sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, أن تجعل لله ندا وهو خلقك. And his response, alayhi salatu wassalam, was to make and put along with Allah a deity, whilst He, tabarak wa ta'ala, has created you. وهو كما ترى دليل على عظم الذنب الشرك وخطره على الناس. And so as is made clear and is apparent, you see the great nature of shirk and the danger that it poses upon mankind. وَنَقْتَصِرُ عَلَى هَاتَيْنِ مَسْأَلَتَيْنِ. And so there you have these two particular issues mentioned, the previous issues mentioned. Then we go on to the third, المسألة الثالثة. So we have the third issue. And Shaykh al-Islam Muḥammad Abdul Wahhāb mentioned المسألة الثالثة وهي أن من أطاع الرسول ووحد الله لا يجوز له موال من حاد الله ورسوله ولو كان أقرب القريب. And so the third issue is that whoever obeys Allah and the Messenger and singles out Allah Ta'ala alone, it is not permissible for him to have association for the one that opposes Allah and His Messenger, even if they are the closest of relatives to them. والدليل قوله تعالى لا تجد قوما يؤمنوا بالله واليوم الآخر يوادون من حاد الله ورسوله ولو كانوا آباءهم وأبناءهم أو إخوانهم أو عشيرتهم أولئك كتب في قلوبهم إيمان وأيدهم بالروح منه ويدخلهم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه أولئك حزب الله ألا إن حزب الله هم المفلحون. And so the proof is the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah al-Mujadala that you will not find the people that believe in Allah and the last day, that they have love for the ones that oppose Allah and His Messenger, even if they were from their fathers, their sons, their brothers, and those that are close to them in relation. They are the individuals that Allah Ta'ala has written upon their hearts true Iman and aided them by way of the soul from Him. And He will enter them into Jannah underneath which rivers flow for eternity. Allah Ta'ala is pleased with them and they are pleased with Him. Indeed, these individuals are the Hizbullah, the party of Allah. And indeed, the party of Allah, they are the individuals that are successful. And so, we've had the previous two principles. The first, where we've established, no doubt, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us and that He sustains us. However, He did not leave us upon that way. Now, from the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the adl of Allah, is that He didn't just leave us by way of just creating us and sustaining us as His creation upon this earth. Rather, He sent to us prophets and messengers. And upon us was to obey those prophets and messengers. And the final from them, no doubt, and the seal of them is Nabi Muḥammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As well as that, we had the second mas'ala which you mentioned earlier on today, is that Allah Ta'ala does not please with anyone that associates anything in partnership with Him in ibadah. And so these were the affairs that were mentioned previously. And so today we have the third principle, that whoever obeys the Messenger of Allah and singles out Allah Ta'ala alone, in his ibadah, is upon Tawheed, it is not permissible for him to have this love and association for the one that opposes Allah and His Messenger, even if they are from the closest of individuals to them. And what is made clear here is mentioned here by the Shaykh raḥimahullāh, أن أتباع محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم يحبون في الله ويبغضون في الله وهذه قاعدة نعم يطبقها ويتفاعل معها أهل الحق دائما. And so the followers of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they love for the sake of Allah, and they have hatred for the sake of Allah. And this is a qaida. This is a general principle that the people adhere to, and the general principle that the people must implement. And this is the way that the people of truth adhere to as well. And it is the way of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, those that have preceded us, and the Salaf al-Salih, and of those that followed them to the Yawm al-Din. إذ كل من أطاع الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم فيما جاء به من عند الله عز وجل من الكتاب والسنة ووحد الله في الربوبية وإلهية وأسمائه وصفاته وجميع أفعاله فإنه لا يجوز له موالى أي محبة والموافقة والمناصرة من كان محاد الله ونابذا لشرعه الكريم ووراء ظهره ومحادا لما جاء به الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم ولو كان من أقرب الناس إليه. And so, as mentioned here, that the one that obeys the Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم in that which has come from Allah Azza wa Jal, by way of the book, by way of his book and the Sunnah, and singles out Allah Ta'ala alone in Rububiyyah and Ilahiyah and Asma wa Sifat, and singles out Allah Ta'ala alone in all of actions, it's not permissible for him to have association, i.e. love and agreement and aid for the one that opposes Allah, has an opposition to Allah, and has opposition to his legislation, and throws this legislation behind his back. I reject the legislation. And for the one that has opposition to his messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even if this person is from the closest of people to him, ومن هنا يجب أن يعرف طالب العلم حقيقة الولاء والبراء، أي من الذي يجب أن يحب ويوالى وعلى أي شيء تكون المحبة والولاء وما هي أسباب المعادة والحجر والبغض. هذه أمور من أساس العقيدة. And so here the Shaykh, he mentions raḥimahullāh, and so here it is an obligation that the talib al-ilm, that the student of knowledge, he has understanding and knowledge of the reality of al-walāʼ wal-barāʼ. He has understanding of the reality where it comes to associating and disassociating for the sake of Allah. And that when it comes to this affair of al-walāʼ wal-barāʼ, loving and hating for the sake of Allah, that is an obligation. And it is from the asas, the foundations of our aqidah, the foundations of our creed. وعليه فإن كل من أطاع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ووحد الله في الربوبية وإلهية وأسماء وصفاته يجب أن يكون حبه في الله وبغضه في الله والموالته في الله ومعادته في الله، فمتى فعل ذلك فقد حقق التمسك بالعروة الإيمان وقد نال ولاية الله تبارك وتعالى التي لا تنال إلا بذلك. And so it's a must that if whilst a person is in obedience to the Prophet ﷺ and he sings Allah Ta'ala alone in his lordship, in his worship, in his names and his attributes, then it's a must that he loves for the sake of Allah and he hates for the sake of Allah, and that his association and disassociation is for the sake of Allah. And so, as is mentioned, the one that makes this manifest, then he is an individual that in reality has had tamassuk, is held on firm to the affair of Iman, and to the essence of the true essence of Iman itself. And it is achieved by way of that, the love of Allah Ta'ala. And this cannot be attained, this love and protection of Allah cannot be attained except by way of it. So here the Shaykh Barakallahu Feekum is outlining the importance of this qa'idah of al-walāʼ wal-barāʼ. Yani association and disassociation for the sake of Allah. That it's not possible that a person can have the perfection and the completion when it comes to their tawheed, and the perfection and the completion when it comes to their iman, and not associate for the sake of Allah, and disassociate for the sake of Allah. So all of these things are from the asas, or from the foundations of a person's aqeedah, their creed. From the foundation of a person's creed. وقد علم أصحاب النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قاعدة الولاء والبراء لمن يكون الولاء وممن يكون البراء، وتفاعلوا مع هذه القاعدة فبرز الابن لأبيه ليقتله لأنه عدو الله. And so this is something that was done and was brought about by the companions. And the companions acted upon this principle to the extent that the son would fight his father. A son would fight his father, seeking to kill him. Why? Because his father was an enemy to Allah. وَبَعْضُهُمْ بَرَزَ لِابْنِهِ لِيَقْتُلُهُ لِأَنَّهُ عَلَى غَيْرِ مَنْهَجِ الْإِسْلَامِ. And then you find that some from the companions would seek to fight against their own sons in order to kill them. Why? Because they were enemies and they were opposers to the manhaj, the methodology, true methodology of Islam. وهذا معروف من سبب النزول لهذه الآية. And so due to this is from the sabab, the reason why this particular ayah was revealed. نعم لا تجد قوما يؤمنوا بالله واليوم الآخر يوادون من حاد الله ورسوله. And the ayah that we mentioned previously. And this is why the ayah was revealed. حيث إنها نزلت في أبي عبيدة عامر ابن جراح الذي قتل أباه لأنه كان كافرا، وفي أبي بكر لأنه برز لابنه وكان كافرا ليحققوا مبدأ الولاء والبراء، فأنزل الله فيهما وفي أمثالهما هذا القرآن الذي يتلى إلى ما شاء الله إلى أن يرفعه الله تبارك وتعالى من الصدور ويرفعه من الأرض. And so this affair of al-walāʼ wal-barāʼ was revealed due to the affair of Abi Ubaidah Amir ibn Jarrah, who killed his father in battle. Why? Because he was upon disbelief. So he killed him. He found his father in battle and killed him in battle. Or as well as Abu Bakr, for indeed he sought and he fought against his son. He fought against his son in battle again because he was upon disbelief and was fighting against the Muslims. And so this was the manifestation of al-walāʼ wal-barāʼ. This is the manifestation of loving and hating for the sake of Allah. That the companions did not look to the affair of just or mere relations. That because this individual is related to me, that this is why I'm going to establish this closeness to him. And look past the fact that the person may be an enemy to the deen of Islam, and an enemy to Allah, and an enemy to the Messenger of Allah. Rather, they looked at what the person was upon by way of i'tiqād, what the individual was upon by way of belief, by way of creed. وَالْمَوْضُوعُ الْوَلَاءُ وَالْبَرَاءُ يَحْتَاجُ إِلَى شَيْءٍ مِنَ التَّفْصِيلِ. And so, when it comes to this affair of al-walāʼ wal-barāʼ, this loving and hating for the sake of Allah, then there is a need of a degree of tafsir, there's a need of a degree of detail to mention to it. فَالْوَلَاء دَرَجَاتٍ. بحسب من توالي والبراء كذلك درجات فمن كان على منهج السلف الصالح في العقيدة والعبادة والمعاملة والأدب والسلوك الأخوة نعم والأخوة الإسلام والإيمان والإحسان فهذا له من الولاء أعلى وأكمل. And so now there is mentioned that when it comes to this loving for the sake of Allah, it's of levels. So it's not absolute. It might not be something which is absolute, that you absolutely love this person for the sake of Allah. And when it comes to the hate for the sake of Allah, there's of levels as well. It's not something which is absolute. So it's not a case that you absolutely hate the person for the sake of Allah. It's something which is of levels. And so the Shaykh brings the first example of an individual. He says you have the person that is upon the manhaj of the Salaf al-Salih, is upon the methodology of the Salaf al-Salih, the 3 generations of the Salaf. And he's upon their manhaj, he's upon their methodology when it comes to his creed, when it comes to his ibadah, when it comes to his dealings, when it comes to his mannerisms, the way he carries himself, when it comes to Islamic brotherhood and Iman and Ihsan. And so this is the love that you have for such an individual will be the highest level of love. And the most perfect, the complete level of love that you will have for such an individual. After the love for Allah and His Messenger. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And so thus Allah Ta'ala mentions, إِنَّمَا وَلِيَّكُمُ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا الَّذِينَ يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ وَيُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ وَهُمْ رَاكِعُونَ. Now, ومن يتولى الله ورسوله والذين آمنوا فإن حزب الله هم المفلحون هم الغالبون. And so this is the meaning, and this is why we have the statement of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, that indeed Allah is your protector, your wali, and His messenger, and those that believe from amongst the individuals that establish the prayer and give the zakah, and they are those that perform the ruku' and perform the salah. And whoever leads off and turns away from Allah and His Messenger, and those who believe, then indeed know that the Hizbullah, the party of Allah, they are the ones that will overcome, eventually overcome, and be successful essentially. So this is the first. So the first type of individual, barakallahu feekum, is the one that is adhering to the manhaj of the Salaf al-Salih. He adheres to Aqeedah. He adheres to the way of the Salaf in Aqeedah, in his dealings, in his ibadah, in his mannerisms. He adheres to the way of the Salaf, of course, most apparent, in the most complete way. So because of the way that he is as an individual, because of the way that they are as an individual, then you love them according to that. So you love them because they are adhering to the haqq in totality. So you love them according to that. Naam. It does not now mean that the person is not mukhti. Naam. It doesn't now mean that the person isn't an individual that never makes mistakes, for example. So we're not saying now that there's this perfect love that you have for the individual is an individual that never makes mistakes. Why? Because the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has informed us that كل بني آدم خطاء وخير الخطائين التوابون, that all of Bani Adam fall into error, and the best of those that fall into error are those that make tawbah. So we know that it's not a case of that the person has to be perfect. However, that the one that is mukhti, yatub, the one that falls into error, the one that falls into sin, he makes tawbah. And generally speaking, this is where, when you hear the term, for example, so-and-so's practicing or so-and-so's not practicing, that this is a clear distinction between the two. Because the one that we say, for example, is multazim bid-deen, adherent to deen, practicing his religion. And then the one that you say, for example, is ghayr multazim, is not practicing his religion, is not upholding his deen. A clear distinction between the two is that the one that falls into error, the one that is upholding his deen, he will fall into error just as the one that is not upholding his deen will fall into error and sin. However, the one that is trying to uphold deen, he will seek to remove the sayyi'at from himself. Whether it be by following that bad deed with a good, or whether it be by following that evil deed with tawbah nasuha, sincere repentance. And so this is a distinction. And so when you find that this is an individual that is seeking to adhere to the way of the Salaf in all of these affairs, then your love for him will be one which is upon perfection. And no doubt, the love is for the sake of Allah. You're loving this person for the sake of Allah. And likewise, you're loving them in relation to the message of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Indeed, you love the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, and you follow his commands, and you stay away from the things that he has warned us and prohibited for us, and that you seek to adhere to that way that he was upon, and that you love those that follow him sallallahu alaihi wasallam generally, and that you love his legislation that he came with, alayhi salatu wasalam, ila yawm al-qiyamah, to the day of judgment. وهي من العبادات الفاضلة ومن علامات أهل الإيمان ومن الصفات والخصائص التي يمتازون بها أهل غيرهم على غيرهم يعني. And so this action of loving for the sake of Allah, and loving that which the Messenger of Allah came with, and his followers, and loving that which he came with by way of legislation, is from the ibadat al-fadila. It's from the actions of ibadah which carries much virtue, and from the signs of the people of Iman. That the people of Iman, this is a distinguishing sign. And from the sifat, from the characteristics, as the specific characteristics which distinguish the people of Iman from other than them. ومن كان دون ذلك من المسلمين فله من الموالى بحسب ما معه من الإسلام والإيمان وإحسان ويبغض بقدر ما فيه من الفسق والعصيان. And so anyone that is lesser than that, so we mentioned the first time, anyone that is lesser than that, then they are loved for that which they have from Islam, Iman and the Ihsan. And there's hatred for them based upon whatever they have from them from transgression, sin and transgression, and disobedience. ومن كان من أهل البدعة المضلة على الاختلاف أنواع أهل البدعة وهم كثير فهؤلاء ما داموا في محيط الإسلام ومن جملة المسلمين ما أخرجتهم بدعهم عن الإسلام فهؤلاء يبغضون بقدر معاصيهم وبدعهم ويهجرون وتهجر مجالسهم ومكالمتهم ولا يؤخذ العلم عنهم وذلك بحسب المصلحة التي تترتب على حجرهم والابتعاد عنهم. طيب. So here the Shaykh has mentioned an important point in relation to Ahlul Bid'ah, the people of innovation. So we're mentioning first and foremost that the love that you have for an individual is based upon their Islam. So if whatever they have from their Islam, you love that from them. Whatever they have from one's position to the haqq, you hate that from them. And so now when it comes to Ahlul Bid'ah, when it comes to the people of innovation, then as long as they are still amongst the Muslims, within Islam, and they're still regarded to be amongst the Muslims, and that their bid'ah has not caused them to leave the fold of Islam, then they are hated for whatever they have from their innovations. And they are abandoned. They are abandoned and boycotted based on what they have for their innovations. And that you leave off their sittings and speaking to them and engaging with them. And knowledge is not sought from them. And this is for a general benefit. This is for the general benefit. So what we understand from this, barakallahu feekum, is that when it comes to the people of innovation, people will say, and you hear the claim, they will say that how can you hate them because they're Muslims? Now, How can you hate them because these are people Muslims? Because we're not negating the fact that Ahlul Bid'ah, people of innovation, they are from amongst the Muslimin. However, what we say is that the discussion is one which is detailed, it's further detailed, and it's nuanced. And it's not a case of saying, because we say we hate Ahlul Bid'ah, that this hate that we're speaking about now is a hate which is mutlaq, it's absolute. Naam. When we speak about the hate for Ahlul Bid'ah, we're speaking about the hate that we have for them for the innovations that they are upon. The fact that they have opposed the haqq, and they are upon certain innovations. And now, when it comes to this affair of their opposition to Allah and His Messenger, we hate them for that. We may have love for individuals for what they are upon from Islam or Iman and Ihsan, but from their innovations, we have hatred for them. And due to that, we boycott and we leave them off. We do not associate with them. Because associating with them, or leaving off the association with them rather, is something which will bring about a greater maslahah for the Sunni. A greater benefit for the Sunni. For indeed, he is protecting himself from their harms. The person is protecting himself from their harms. And so this is the maslahah, this is the benefit of leaving off the majalis of Ahlul Bid'ah, leaving off taking knowledge from Ahlul Bid'ah. No doubt, you would not take knowledge from a person of innovation, for indeed he might give you something from his bid'ah. He might narrate something to you, and within what he narrates to you is some innovation. So for your benefit, and in order for you to not fall into mukhalafat, yani opposition to the haqq, is that the person does not follow this individual, does not associate with this individual, does not speak with this individual, does not take knowledge from this individual. And that is the manner in which al-walāʼ wal-barāʼ is made manifest, and you make tatbiq, is implemented with these individuals. You have some people that may say that when it comes to the boycotting of a person, you should not boycott a person unless it benefits him. And when you're boycotting. And the reality is no. The first person you are seeking to benefit when it comes to boycotting someone is yourself. You're seeking to benefit yourself. You're seeking to protect yourself from their harms. Because they are a person that has mukhalafat with them. An individual that has opposition to the haqq with them. And they may cause that, or they may say something that may enter your heart and leave you upon a particular way that they're upon, or a similar way that they're upon. So you leave them to protect yourselves. If by way of you leaving them it benefits them as well, then of course this is good. This is something which is khair. But it cannot be said that this is a condition for you to leave off someone. So no doubt it can benefit them. Because if you now leave off a person, if you now boycott an individual because of what he's upon, well, how would that benefit them? How would you say it would benefit them? Barakallahu feekum.
Because you're stopping their evil being taught. Meaning, because obviously by their bid'ah, what they're calling to, they're sin from it.
That's one thing. It stops them spreading it further. Now, because it can cause them to reflect upon what they're upon. It causes them to reflect upon what they're upon. If, for example, now, you have a companion, and now you've deviated from the truth, and you've been advised, you still not have accepted the advice, and then you see the same individual that was your companion is not giving you salams, for example, or he refuses to speak to you, and refuses to engage with you. That's something that will cause you to reflect. That will cause you to reflect and think about why this is occurring. And for the one that inshallah is upon khair and is granted guidance, hidayah, then he will reflect to the extent that he may make tawbah and leave off that sin, and leave off that innovation. So this is the benefit that can occur from it. But it will not now say that it is a condition that this person benefits from it before you leave them off. No, rather, You're seeking to benefit yourself first and foremost. And so, the Shaykh goes on to mention, فَكَمْ مِنْ إِنسَانٍ سَلِيمَ الْفِطْرَةِ قَابَلَ لِلْخَيْرِ يلتمس الخير يلتمس الصلاح لنفسه فيتسلط عليه أهل البدع على اختلاف أنواعهم إما جهمية والمعطلة وإما المعتزلة وإما الأشاعرة ومن والهم. And so the Shaykh mentions that how many people have a sound fitrah. How do people see they have a sound fitrah? And they are accepting of the truth. They seek good for themselves. They seek upright, they seek rectification, upright and righteous affairs for themselves. How many of these people do you see they are overcome by people of innovation upon their different forms? Whether it be the Jahmiyyah that rejects either names and attributes, whether it be the Mu'tazila, whether it be the Ash'ari and other than them, those that follow them. وإما أهل الحزبيات المتنظمات السرية على اختلاف جماعاتهم التي قد تعددت وتنوعت ومشاربهم هؤلاء كلهم أهل البدع. And so even as well you have the different groups and parties that you find now where they seek to have secret gatherings, and they are upon their different forms, and there are many different types of them, and all of these are regarded as being from the people of innovations. إذا تسلطوا على طالب العلم وأعطاه من ناحية المحبة والأخوة ونصرة الإسلام ومشاكل ذلك استمالوه حتى يتمكنوا منه وبعد ذلك يعطوه من تعليماتهم المنحرفة شيئا فشيئا حتى يصبحوا فردا من أفرادهم وجنديا من جنودهم على غير منهج مستقيم وإنما على البدع والتضليل وإثارة الفتن. وهذا موجود في صفوف الحزبيين على اختلاف أنواعهم وحركيين على اختلاف مساميهاتهم. And so the Shaykh goes on further. So he's mentioning in terms of how many times would you see now that these people seek to overcome and overpower a talib al-ilm. Yeah, they seek a student of knowledge. And they may approach him with a form of love in action. And incline to something that they'll make him incline towards them from brotherhood, what they regard as being brotherhood, and things of the like. Or they may furnish him with something from wealth. And they do so that they establish a relationship with him, so that they can give him their teachings. You can give them their deviated teachings, bit by bit, to the extent that he becomes an individual amongst the individuals amongst them, or he becomes someone that is a soldier from amongst their troop, and he leaves off the manhaj al-mustaqim. He leaves off the straight path and the manhaj, which is upon istiqam, upon that straight way. And rather, he's left upon a way of innovations. And he's left upon a way of being astray, where he seeks to spread fitan, trials and tribulations. And this is something which is present within the ranks of the Hizbiyin, the ranks of these partisans, and the ranks of the Harrakin, the ranks of those that are revolutionists, and those that are like them. Now this is what has been mentioned here by the Shaykh in relation to the effects. So first, the Shaykh, raḥimahullāh, he lays the foundation and the importance of this affair of al-walāʼ wal-barāʼ, the love and the hatred for the sake of Allah. Thereafter, he goes on to mention how this is the case when it comes to having walāʼ wal-barāʼ. This is something which is a completion of your tawheed. It's a completion and a perfection of your tawheed. And that it is in relation to anyone, the love that you have for an individual is in relation to what he's upon from his actions, what he's upon from his creed. If the person is upon the way and the manhaj of the Salaf al-Salih and everything, then you love him in completion and in totality, upon perfection. If the person opposes it in any way, shape or form, then you may love him for that which is upon of haqq, but you hate him for that which is upon from batil. And then the example is brought from Ahlul Bid'ah. Why? Because, as is mentioned, the hatred that you have for Ahlul Bid'ah, the hatred that you have for the people of innovation, because of their opposition to the haqq, and because of their opposition to the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the hatred that you have for these individuals is one that necessitates that you leave them off and you boycott them. So the Shaykh mentioned the necessity of boycotting these individuals, leaving them off. And thereafter, the Shaykh mentions examples of why it's a necessity. It's a necessity because, as the Shaykh mentions here, raḥimahullāh, that you may have someone that he has a fitrah salima. He has a sound fitrah. His disposition is to accept the haqq. Now, he is multamis lil khayr. He's an individual that is seeking good. But he is brought in by these individuals. And then they seek to establish a relationship with him. And then bit by bit, they start to give them their teachings. To the extent that he becomes an individual from amongst them. And so this is, the Shaykh is outlining here, the evil of continuing that relationship with these individuals. And what comes as the harm if you continue the relationship with those that oppose Allah and His Messenger. And why you have the importance of this affair of leaving off and abandoning the people of innovation. Allah Ta'ala knows best. And so we'll conclude here, inshaAllah Ta'ala. And bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, in the next lesson, go on to discuss the affair of, or continue discussing this affair of al-walāء wal-barāʼ, in loving and hating for the sake of Allah, in accordance with the kitab and the sunnah, and the manhaj of the Salaf al-Salih. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam, jazakumullah khayra, wa barakallahu feekum, wa sallallahu wa barak, ala nabiyyina Muḥammad, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi sallam. No.
With regard to the reference to the verse of al-Jadil, if you were to have an acquaintance who was, say, Christian, atheist, would it be fitting to say, leave that person altogether? Even if you're not planning to give that one to them, you're not accepting it, but you're on good terms with them, you're not for chit-chat, etc.
They're an acquaintance, and you said they're an acquaintance, but they're
not really ready to accept any da'wah.
Okay.
What, say they're like a childhood friend.
No.
And you have history.
No.
Maybe with regards to the eye, would it be better to leave this individual off?
Yes. Why? It would be better to leave that individual off because every relationship we have, we have to look at what the basis of that relationship is. Why do we have that relationship? So, for example, we have our friends. Now we have our brothers that we have. What is the basis of that relationship? Is lillah. Now, the whole reason that we are brothers and the whole reason that we are together is for the sake of Allah. That we love one another because from what's apparent, you're an individual that is obedient to Allah. You're an individual that I can benefit from, and inshallah you can benefit from me. That we benefit one another in terms of each other's company. And so that's the basis of every single relationship that we have in our lives. Even when it comes to our relatives, the basis should always be that the relationship is established upon seeking good with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So even if, for example, some of us we have relatives that are not Muslim, some of us we have relatives that are not upon the manhaj, or upon the manhaj of Salaf, some of us have relatives that are not upon the sunnah, some of us have relatives that are upon innovation, it's still a must that we make that basis of that relationship one which is pleasing to Allah. So now, if you go back to the example you gave with the acquaintance that is not Muslim, there's no da'wah really occurring, then the question has to be asked, what's the basis of that relationship? Because the relationship, there's nothing is coming from the relationship except that it's not in relation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not something that is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so, no doubt everything we seek to do should be something that is pleasing to Allah and not something which is mere la'ab or lahu, play and amusement. So there's no doubt this is something that we'd say that relationship should be left. But at the same time, the person should strive to give this person da'wah and establish that relationship upon da'wah. But as Shaykh Ubaid, raḥimahullāh, he mentions a clear distinction between two affairs, al-musāḥabah wa manāsaḥah. You have musāḥabah, where you take someone as a companion, and that's what we're talking about today. For example, I take so-and-so as a companion because he's an individual, from what's apparent, he's an individual that adheres to the manhaj of the Salaf when it comes to aqidah, when he adheres to the manhaj of the Salaf when it comes to ibadah, adheres to the manhaj of the Salaf when it comes to his mannerisms. So I take that person as a companion. That's musāḥabah. Then you have munāsaḥah, where you take someone as a companion, and you take them as a companion just due to the fact that you are advising them upon good, and that you are seeking to benefit them in terms of advising them upon good. So it's not true companion, it's not absolute companionship, but it's companionship for a specific reason, which is for them, inshallah, to accept the haqq. So it's clear to distinguish between the two, because sometimes you may find that people, they will engage in a general companionship, and then when they are put to task about it and they're asked about that relationship, they will say, "No, I'm just with this person because I'm advising him." Many times you hear this, "I'm just advising him," but the reality is, it's just a close relationship. And if you were to look at it in terms of even percentage-wise, there might be 5-10% advice, and then 90%, 80-90% kalam fadi. Just whatever they want to talk about, whatever other stuff. So it's a must that the person distinguishes between the two, and if that relationship you're having with the person is one of munasaha, one of advising, then it has to be upon advice. And that has to be the key focus of that relationship. Allāh.
And would you say that a person with a weak characteristics should just stay away from them?
In terms of weak characteristics, generally speaking, a person should stay away anyway, regardless of weaker characteristics, strong characteristics. A person may regard themselves as having strong character, but then find themselves falling into a relationship with these people that is not befitting. So that's one thing. Second thing, though, is that if a person feels like he may be more susceptible and he sees that this relationship as a person is a fitna for them, anything that a person sees as maybe as a potential fitna for them, they should leave it anyway. So if they feel within their own selves that their shakhsiyah is not one, their character, their personality is not one of strength, right? And that by way of being anywhere near such an individual, it may be a trial for them, and a hardship for them, and a harm for them. Then, like anything in our lives, if it's potentially harmful, we leave it and we seek to leave that and flee from it in the best way possible. So it's the same thing here. But the person should not, just as if a person believes that he's a weaker personality, then of course he should leave that, definitely. But the opposite is also true as well. The person, if they feel that they're a stronger personality, they should not become complacent upon that feeling that they have about their own shakhsiyah, their own personality, because that may not be the case, or that may not be enough to repel any potential harms. Allāh. خير. الله يحفظكم إخوان. خير. صلى الله وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وسلم وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين.